The Poughkeepsie Tapes debuted in 2007, and wow, what a film, honestly. I mean, one of the most disturbing films I've watched this year. It's a pseudo documentary that follows the events of the Water Street Butcher, also known as Ed. Those are the two names we get for the killer throughout the film, who had begun his killings in Poughkeepsie, New York. He had thought out pretty much every little aspect of his killings. I mean, how the police would pin it all together, how the people of the town would characterize and react to everything, even how the judicial system itself would react. Our killer Ed has an obsession with control, dressing up as a play doctor and taking control of every situation, even how people think. The film is a mockumentary as we get interviews with detectives and FBI profiles throughout, breaking down the case. The movie's edited together from these interviews and footage the killer himself took on his own camera, which is always falling from regular quality to black and white, then technicolor, night vision, and regular quality. Ed is a serial killer who understands how to manipulate and plan out every situation perfectly. He preys on women, men, and children, and he even manages to get a cop car to ensure the safety of his victims before his most brutally shown kill in the film, which I'll get into in a bit. He spends time setting each crime up so they can't link one to another. Profilers believing in one murder was calculated by an intelligent man who knows the law, and another a mentally handicapped first-time killer who had little thought out. All of this is part of his plan. The kills don't get grouped together. Eventually, he stalks this girl Cheryl, breaking into her home where she and her boyfriend are. There's a tense moment where he leaves the camera to show him hidden in a closet right in front of both of them while he just watches. It's a great moment and the audience is left in awe, waiting for the next move, since the characters are in obvious danger. It leaves a raw taste in the viewer's mouth that is quickly forgotten as the killer follows them into another room, waiting before smashing the boyfriend's skull in. Chasing Cheryl, he drops the camera where you just see the shadow of Ed beating on the girl. He mutilates the boyfriend and leaves with Cheryl still alive. He keeps her in the basement for years, abusing her and breaking her mind. She can't think without him telling her what to say, and he makes her believe she truly becomes his slave. It's a scene straight out of Roots because he makes her forget her name and she only calls herself Slave. There's an eerie moment where he has these two Girl Scouts in his home and you think the worst, but finally he lets them leave to reveal that the table they're all sitting at is actually Cheryl with a cloth over top of her. It really kind of threw me through a loop. I was not expected that at all. The police catch on to who they think the killer is, a cop, who they linked to almost every crime. On trial, he's found guilty and condemned to death. The real killer mocks the police department by sending them a hidden message with a map, revealing he is still alive and where he lives. They exonerated the cop who was put to death, but it was on the day 9/11. No one in the newspaper read about it because his exoneration was overshadowed from the headline status and put to page 6. Eventually, he picks up this girl in his cop car to give her a ride. He taunts her with some dialogue not even fit for YouTube before bringing her home to Cheryl. The girl is strung up and her mouth is taped. Ed crawls his way from the corner of the screen, a mask on top of his head, so when he straightens out, it reveals his signature plague doctor look underneath, where he takes out these two finger knives connected to his hand, and in the most gruesome moment in the film, he puts them both straight into her throat. As she screams, blood pours through the tape, and she suffocates in her own blood. An extremely dark and hard-to-watch moment for most, and honestly, it kind of came out of nowhere, because the whole film is somewhat tamed. It's more of like a mental loop it throws you through, and this was a lot more gruesome and straightforward. After this, the police traced the map to the killer's home and moved every SWAT member they could in, finding over 2,400 hours of tapes he had recorded of himself, which is what had been spliced throughout the film, where he keeps his face hidden and shows the cops how he changes MO over and over and over again, even getting the justice system to kill for him, proving he has power and control over even the police. The killer is nowhere to be found. He wanted them to make it here to find these tapes so they knew just how better he is. It brings him joy to know how, even with all this information, he's still another step ahead. The tapes are numbered in sequential order and are missing 27 tapes for unknown reasons. An aspect I don't quite understand just yet, but I find it to be a much better idea of the film since it keeps the characters and the audience guessing. They also find Cheryl alive. Missing teeth, cut, bruised, burned, and tortured, she returns home. After an interview with her, we get to see how broken she is, unable to think without her master, displaying Stockholm Syndrome in the best way I've seen in any horror film. She's a broken person, left a husk of who she once was, and unable to move forward without her master pushing her along. I mean, even falling in love with the man who tortures her for a year. 2 weeks go by after the interview, and Cheryl kills herself. Her body is buried, but Ed soon returns, exonerating the corpse and taking it with him, leaving one last tape behind. The film returns full circle with a cold open with the exoneration and Cheryl's funeral. This film was a disturbing ride and left me pondering how real things just like this happen all the time. The film itself is based on reality, which is a story for another time, like on Maz Kanata. But in short, there's a series of killers taking inspiration, namely Kendall Francois, who had claimed 8 lives in Poughkeepsie, New York. The film makes it a point to acknowledge she is still out there, probably killing and assaulting more people in systematic, phallic ways that are impossible to track unless he allows them to be. It's interesting, too, how the film almost never even came out since it was canned for years after the initial trailer debuted. I would love to interview people behind this film. I find it to be a fascinating project and would love to get a deeper dive into the making of the film firsthand. The movie itself is for some of the more hardcore horror fans, so if that's you, it's on Tubi for free at the time of this recording. I'd recommend you check it out if you haven't already.
Sometimes I wonder just why I entrust a fool like you with so important a mission.